ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. So you all know the topic for our discussion today. We had discussed the nature of avidya last time, and today and maybe the next class also we will discuss, as I told you that we will be discussing the products, or you can say what other pain-bearing obstructions which spring from avidya, which have their source in avidya. So just a little recapitulation, I will just share some images. So here you can see what we had discussed last time, that the kleshas or the pain-bearing obstructions are the following. So those who can understand Devanagari, they can read in original: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, pancha klesha. So these are the 5 pain-bearing obstructions. What are they? Ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. And what is ignorance? We had discussed last time also. So here you can see in front of you, ignorance, kshetram uttaresham. Kshetra is the field. Field, because from the field everything is produced. So ignorance is the productive field of all these that follow. That follow means asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. So the cause of all these, we have seen that it is avidya. And we have also seen that what is avidya or ignorance? It is viparyaya or wrong cognition. That is lack of awareness of reality. And because of this mistake, what happens? We take the non-eternal, the impure, the painful, and the non-self as the eternal, the pure, the happy, and the Atman or the self. So just another image. You can see here, ignorance is taking the non-eternal, that is the anitya, for the nitya, that is the eternal. The impure or the ashuchi for the shuchi. The painful we take as something which will give us pleasure, and anatma we take as the atma or the self. So all these things are caused by avidya. And the other 4 mentioned are its products. So all these different types of impressions have one source, that is ignorance. So avidya kshetram uttaresham. Avidya is the field, that is the source of all that follow. So what does it mean? It says in Sanskrit, sarvesham avidya sattve sattvam. If avidya is present, all the others are present. It is as simple as that. and tad abhave tad abhava. If avidya is there is abhava, if there is absence of avidya, then no other kleshas, no other pains can be present. So what are the products of avidya? The first one we will discuss today, and if there is time, we can discuss the second one also. So the first one is very important, that is Asmita. Asmita means egoism. Now, egoism in metaphysics, actually it means the self, means that it is not the higher self, mind you. Here it means the self which feels, acts or think. If we define it in Western psychology, Western philosophy, it will mean the self means that which feels, acts or thinks. That is how they define it. And it comes from the Latin word ego. It is interesting to note that ego is a Latin word which means I. Yeah, and from ego, of course, comes egoism. Now, of course, in English also the word ego is there. So, when I was preparing for this today's talk, I thought that let me also see how does Western psychology and Western philosophy, what do they say about this? What do they say about egoism and the source of egoism, etc. So, with my cursory research, I could find nothing concrete in Western psychology which gives a really clear idea of what egoism is. At least I couldn't find. In fact, I was left completely confused after I saw what so many opinions of egoism are. I'll just put these before you, so I'll just share these with you. So, in Western psychology, a common definition of ego is self-esteem or self-importance. And the psychological definitions are so many. One way psychologists use the word ego is to differentiate the self from others. So I'll just, some concepts I will share with you. First is, one of the things which the egoism means is self-concept. Self-concept refers to your view of yourself. So it is the same as self-image. Your self-concept is a complex set of ideas about what kind of person you think you are. This is one. The next they say that ego in psychology can also refer to your identity. In this sense, your ego encompasses everything that makes you who you are. It can include your physical characteristics, your social status and abilities, etc., etc. Then another way in which they use is self-perspective. Self-perspective is your unique way of yourself as part of the larger world. Then another term they use is self-worth. Your sense of self-worth depends on your ability to see the good in yourself and judge it as being enough or not enough. So when we place value on being who we are and doing the things that make us happy, that is called self-worth. So many things are there. Now which is important to what degree, very difficult to say. And about the origin of ego, we are completely in the dark when we go to the Western psychology. Some say it is development of the brain. Some say that ego creates itself and also destroys itself. So it's such a hodgepodge that at least I could not have any clear idea of what these people are really trying to say. Nobody can really pinpoint. There is no exact definition at all of ego. So when we study those things and when we come to this yoga philosophy, it is really something like coming into daylight from complete darkness. I don't mind telling you. Yeah, that's what I felt. Because here everything has been defined so beautifully about the ego and other things also that one is left in no doubt whatsoever. So let us see what the great sage Patanjali says about the ego. And of course, many of our saints and sages have also discussed it. In many scriptures it has been discussed. So today we will concentrate on, since we are discussing the yoga philosophy, we will concentrate on what Patanjali says. So let us go to his definition. I will share the image with you. You can see here how he defines egoism. We will discuss it, of course. So, egoism is the identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. This is the definition. So, in Sanskrit it is Drik Darshana Shaktyo. One is Drik Shakti and one is Darshana Shakti. Drik is the seer, one who sees, and Darshana is what we see. So when I am seeing this computer in front of me, I am seeing all of you. So I am the Drik or the Drashta, and all that I see is Darshana. So when I identify myself with what I see, Ekatmata, that is called. When these two completely different things are identified, then it gives rise to egoism. This is what Patanjali says. So, suppose I am wearing some clothes. Now, by a wrong identification, to give a very simple example, I begin to identify myself with those clothes. So if the cloth is torn, I feel that I am torn. If the cloth is damaged, I feel that something has happened to me. In very simple language. So this is what happens. Here also, the seer, that is one who witnesses all the panorama of the world, identifies himself with what he witnesses. This is the thing. So we will just go into the beautiful explanation which Swami Vivekananda gives on this. So I quote him, the seer or the Atman, we have discussed so many times the nature of the Atman. So the seer or the Atman is really the self, the pure one, the ever holy, the infinite, the immortal. This is the self of man. And this is the Drik Shakti, what in the sutra we have seen. And what is the Darshan Shakti? Darshan means what are the instruments of seeing? How do we, when the seer witnesses the world, he has some instruments. What are the instruments? We have discussed that. First is the mind. The mind connects with external instruments, that is eyes, ears, etc., the organs. We have all discussed it all. That the external instruments like the eye, this is the instrument, this is not the organ. This instrument sees something. The message is carried to the real organ, which is the nerve center. The real organ carries the message to the mind. The mind interprets it and presents it before the self. So everything except the self, from the mind to the organ to the external instrument, all these are instruments of seeing. But the self, by mistake, identifies itself with these instruments. That is egoism. That is how Patanjali defines egoism. So Swami Vivekananda says now, what are the instruments? The chitta or the mind, the buddhi, the manas, these are all the same thing, different names given due to the different functions, and the indriyas or sense organs. These are the instruments for the self to see the external world, and the identification of the self with the instruments is what is called the ignorance of egoism. So ignorance, because avidya, the egoism is a part of avidya. That is why Swami Vivekananda says ignorance of egoism. We say I am the mind, I am thought, I am angry, or I am happy. How can we be angry and how can we hate? We should identify ourselves with the self that cannot change. If the self is unchangeable, how can it be one moment happy and one moment unhappy? The self is formless, infinite, omnipresent. What can change it? It is beyond all law. What can affect it? Nothing in the universe can produce an effect on it. Yet, through ignorance, we identify ourselves with the mind stuff and think that we feel pleasure or pain. So this is the problem. This is what egoism is. That is wrong identification. There is absolutely no plundering here and there. It may be this, it may be that, nothing of that sort. This is the precise definition. This is what egoism is. And explaining this aphorism of Patanjali, we have told that there is a commentary of Vyasa which elaborates this explanation. So what does Vyasa say about this aphorism in explanation? He says, Purusho Drik Shakti, same thing. Drik Shakti means absolute awareness. And Buddhi is Darshana Shakti, through which the self cognizes everything. That is the Buddhi. So, Drik Shakti, Buddhi Darshana Shakti. Purusha is Drik Shakti, Buddhi is Darshana Shakti. Ityetayo Eka Swarupa. When these appear to be absolutely one. When I say I am happy, or when I say I am sad, do we feel that I am simply the one unchanging reality while the mind is happy or the mind is sad? We don't feel like that. When we are happy, we feel that we are happy and we are elated. And when the mind is sad, we feel down and we shed tears and we become morose and we become depressed. So we don't feel the two to be separate. We don't feel that the mind is sad or happy, but I am the same. We feel that we are the mind. As simple as that. So this is called the instrument and the seer as being Eka Swarupa. So when these two become one because of wrong identification, what is that? Asmita klesha uchyate. That klesha, that pain, is called asmita. So if we say that what is the pain, what is the pain in this? Of course it is painful. We are shaken out of our true nature according to the states of our mind. We have no independence. Till this wrong identification is there, we are absolute slaves of our mind. And because of the mind, it extends to the body also. If the mind is happy, we are happy. If the mind is sad, we think we are sad. But actually, we have nothing to do with the mind at all. The mind can go any way it likes. We are completely independent. We are completely free. But because of this identification, the mind drags us around in whatever way it pleases. We have no independence at all. And then it comes to the body also by extension. We haven't eaten, we say, oh, I am hungry. We are forced to eat. We cannot say, no, I will not eat. That hunger, that identification with the body forces us to appease the body. If you are ill, have a toothache, we can't stop. We have to go to a doctor. We cannot say, no, I am not the body, I am the self. Because we are identifying ourselves with all this. So it is a pain. That is why it is called a klesha. And this klesha is called Asmita or egoism. So when the two utterly different entities, Vyasa says this, I quote, when the two utterly different entities like the experiencer and the experience appear united, that is called Asmita. And he further elaborates, because of this only, all kinds of experience, in Sanskrit it is called bhoga. So bhoga we generally think to mean only enjoyment. But technically, in philosophical terms, bhoga is not only enjoyment, bhoga is also suffering. Any kind of experience is bhoga. So all our experiences, seeing, thinking, doing, feeling, all our experiences without any exception are due to this wrong identification. Once the self is completely detached from the mind and body, there is no question of experiencing anything. Then the self is immersed in the self. That is called the highest state, the state of Samadhi. And that is our aim. That is complete freedom from all these shackles. But till we are identified in this way, we cannot help but experience the world. We will be forced to experience. Even if we shut our eyes, the world will enter through our ears, through our nose. Somehow it will enter. Unless we are in deep sleep, but we cannot sleep forever. We have to wake up. Even the experience of deep sleep, which we have discussed, even deep sleep is an experience. That is also experienced because of this wrong cognition. So, all kinds of bhoga or experience are only possible due to this wrong identification. And what happens when the real nature of the seer and the seen are known? When I realize my real nature and when I realize that I am not a part of this, what is called in Sanskrit prapancha, the part of all this world, when we know that, what happens? Swarupa pratilambetu. Swarupa pratilamba means when we realize our true nature. Swarupa pratilambetu tayoho kaivalyam. It is called kaivalya. Kaivalya means liberation. Kaivalya, liberation, nirvana, brahma jnana, whatever you say. It is basically the same thing, only the terms vary. So, kaivalyam bhavati. When we know the true nature, we attain kaivalya or freedom. Kuto bhoga iti. Kuto bhoga. And there is no scope for any kind of bhoga there. The world cannot enter in the self. The self is completely free. So when you attain Kaivalya, when we attain Kaivalya, then there is no question of any kind of worldly experience at all. Then we are free from, not only from this so-called happiness, but also freed from misery forever. Because it all springs from this wrong cognition. So, what we experience, what we are experiencing every time, that this experience is the nature of mental knowledge, mental cognition. And the experiencer, the self, is of the nature of consciousness. So consciousness and matter, because the mind is also matter, consciousness and matter can never be the same. Jada, inert things, and Chetana, that which is conscious, can never be the same. Therefore, if we think them to be the same, it has to be a mistake. So it is just the absence of distinction between Purusha and Prakriti, that is the self and matter. So in our awareness, when we lose this distinction, it gives rise to egoism. Happiness and misery, everything are objects of experience. And the inner organs, what we have seen that Antakarana, the inner organs, are the means of experiencing happiness and misery. But unfortunately, these two are identified. So another great commentator on this sutra, Vachaspati, he also says the same thing in different words. He says the consciousness and mind are respectively the self and the non-self. So the particular ignorance which is responsible for the cognition of this not self as the self, and which is only a delusion and not a reality, is egoism. So how this is a delusion, we will discuss that also. Now Vachaspati springs up an objection, that the question arises, why should they not in fact be considered as one when we experience them as one? So one objection from us, people like us, can be, you say they are different, but I say they are one. Everybody feels the same way. That when we feel misery, we say that I am miserable. When we are happy, we say I am happy. So why should I believe you? Why shouldn't I think that both are actually one and there is no mistake at all? So in answer, he says that the reason given is that their properties, their characteristics are completely different. If two things are completely different in nature, how can they be one? So he explains it. He says the Purusha or the self possesses the characteristics of unchangeability, immutability, infiniteness, all these things. And the characteristics of what is seen is that it is always changing. It is always in a flux. The world is always changing. So when these two things are completely different in nature, how can they be one? And if you say that, how do you know the self is unchangeable? Then of course we have discussed it and we will discuss it later also. There are many arguments to support it. That without there being something permanent, who can witness this whole world of changes? Who can say that I am the same person who experienced happiness yesterday and is experiencing misery today? Who can say that? Only one who witnesses both the states. So this is a long discussion. So it can be proved that the self is unchangeable. And everybody knows that matter or the world is always changing. So when these two things are completely different in nature, how can they ever be one? They cannot be. But still, they are looked upon as one. And this mistake gives rise to Asmita, Klesha or egoism. And when their natures are understood, it gives us freedom. This is the thing. So another, just a few lines from another beautiful commentary, little Sanskrit, and of course we'll translate it. So here it is explained in very simple terms. He says that this is from the commentary of Bhoja. He says, Anayor bhogya bhoktritvena jada ajadatvena atyanta bhinna rupayor ekata abhimana asmita iti uchyate. In beautiful ways he has given, very simple. Anayor bhogya bhoktritvena, he employs these two words. The same thing he says in a different way so that we can understand better. What is this? Bhogya and bhokta. Bhogya means that which is enjoyed, that which is experienced. So in everyday parlance he explains that suppose when I am eating something, if I am eating, that food is bhogya and I am the eater, I am the bhokta. So when this feeling of doership, here in philosophical literature, when we apply the terms as bhogya and bhokta, it generally implies that this bhokta means when I feel that I am the doer, I perform actions, I experience the results. This is the feeling that I am the karta and I am the bhokta. I do something, I enjoy the result or suffer accordingly. So here he explains it in that way. So bhogya bhoktritvena, then jada means inert, ajadatvena. What is ajada? What is not inert? The self. What is jada? All this the whole universe, all the matter. So atyanta bhinna rupayo, they are completely different. Ekata abhimana, when we think them to be one, that is called asmita. Then he again says, Yatha prakritivata kartritva bhoktritva rahitena api kartaham bhoktaham iti abhimanyate. In the simplest Sanskrit he has defined it. That when the Purusha, because of his connection with the mind, with the waves of the mind, with the chitta vritti, when the Purusha, because of his identification with those, he thinks, although he is kartritva bhoktritva rahita, in the Purusha there is no kartritva, he does not do anything. Because there is no kartritva, there cannot be bhoktritva also. If I don't do something, how will I enjoy? So kartritva bhoktritva rahitena api, still, api means still, kartaham, I am the doer, bhoktaham, I am the experiencer, iti abhimanyate, when it thinks like that. Then soyam asmita viparyapta klesha uchyate, that is, it is a viparya. Viparya we've already discussed in detail, that is wrong cognition. When it does not see correctly, that is called asmita. And without this identification, no experience, no interaction is possible. So the same thing is again explained in another Patanjali Sutra, another aphorism of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where he emphasizes on this aspect, that no experience is possible without this identification. What does he say? He says, Sattva Purushayo Atyanta Sankirnayo Pratyaya Vishesho Bhoga. Bhoga is experience. So he says that experience of pleasure or pain arises from a conception which does not distinguish between the two extremely different entities, the mind and the Purusha. This is what Patanjali says in this sutra. Atyanta Sankirna means they are completely different, they are of the opposite nature. But somehow this false conception arises. Call it Maya or call it Avidya, whatever you say. And when these two extremely different entities are taken as one, they are completely mixed up, so much mixed up that they cannot be distinguished. It is called Asmita, and it is the source of all kinds of experience. So to consider the Buddhi and Purusha as identical, to have the conception of both at one and the same time, is known as experience, any kind of experience. As knowledge, experience is a form of the fluctuation of the vrittis of the buddhi. Experience is what? Whenever there is experience, there is a vritti in our mind. We have discussed that in cognitive states. And because it is a fluctuation of the mind, it is an object of knowledge. Mind is an object of knowledge. So whenever there is any activity in the mind, that has to be an object of knowledge. And anything which is an object of knowledge or knowable, it is behaves as an object made known by the seer or the self. So when these two are identified, the knower and the known, the bhogya and the bhokta, the drik shakti and the darshana shakti, all these terms are used so that we can understand it better. When these are confused, identified with one another, it gives rise to egoism. And we have read that one commentator, that Vachaspati Mishra, has said that this is a delusion. It cannot exist. It does not exist because it cannot exist. How can it not exist? Why is it unreal? So Raman Maharshi, such a great saint, he was there in India, a knower of God. He has explained this in a few words very beautifully. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna has also said, we will come to that later. So Raman Maharshi says, if you say, suppose you say that the egoism is real, then you have to say from where this feeling arises. You have to tell me. If you say that something is real, there must be a source. So he says, then what is the source? If you say the source is the self, there are only two things here, the self and the not self. There is no third thing involved because there is no third thing in the universe. There are only two entities. So if you say that egoism springs from the self, it is impossible. It is a silly statement because Purusha cannot be the cause of anything. It is completely free. It is pure consciousness. There can never be any change. Anything arising in me is a change. There has to be a mutation. So it cannot arise in the Purusha. That feeling cannot arise. And if you say egoism arises in the mind and body, mind and body are completely inert. A completely inert substance can never have the feeling of I. When we say I, that is existence. No, I exist. That means what? I am conscious that I exist. Is it not? So if this egoism arises, first of all, it cannot arise from the self at all. And if you say it arises from the mind and body, matter which is jada, which is achetana, can never give rise to this kind of feeling. It is not possible. So Raman Maharshi says, the body composed of insentient matter cannot say I. That is, cannot be the cause of the I thought. On the other hand, the eternal consciousness cannot have such a thing also, cannot have such a thing as birth. Nothing can spring from that. So what is the problem then? We don't know. This is called avidya or maya or whatever you call it. It is a delusion because it cannot be real. But still it springs from somewhere. From an error or avidya or whatever you call it. So what happens, as a result, what happens? The consciousness and matter, consciousness is called chit, matter is called jada. Jada means inert. So what happened? Because of this wrong feeling, they are tied in a knot, as it were. When you tie a knot, what is a knot? By its very definition is something which you cannot untangle by natural means. You have to consciously untie it, otherwise it will never go. So they say that because of this wrong identification in Vedanta, it says that the chit, what is conscious, and the jada are as it were tied into a knot. Because they are so tied, it is extremely difficult to untie this. Although there is no such knot. And in Sanskrit, in Vedanta, this knot is called granthi, that is chit jad granthi. So many of you who have studied must have come across this term, that this chit jad granthi, what is this? This tying up, the self has tied itself up with what is not the self. This knot ties the Atman to matter. So without cutting this knot, self-realization is not possible at all. Because when we are, suppose you are immersed in an ocean, some weight is tied around your leg and you are in that ocean, you are thrown into water. So unless you cut that, how will you rise up? Till you are weighed down by that weight, by that knot, you cannot free yourself. So Atman is, as it were, tied down to matter by this knot, which does not exist in reality. Because of this, we are stuck. We are stuck to matter. Toothache, run to the doctor. Stomachache, go to another doctor. Headache, go to a psychiatrist. We cannot free ourselves from that. So Sri Ramakrishna explains this. He says, I quote from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, according to the Vedanta, one has to know the real nature of one's own self. But such knowledge is impossible without the renunciation of the ego. That is why he says. Here there is another lot of confusion I found. Like when I was reading the definitions in Western psychology and all. On one hand, they say, some people say, there are various opinions, I am just quoting one or two. One hand they say, cultivate a healthy ego. Yeah, they say, some people say that. And on the other hand, they will say, if someone has a very big ego, we'll say, oh, that fellow is such a egotist, he is such a big ego. That is not a complimentary remark. Now, how can it be that something is healthy also, but when too much of it is there, it is not healthy? It is not like some food that you take a little food, that is okay, but if you eat too much, you get stomach pain. Mental characteristics are not like outside things, these things like things of the world. if something is good for my mind, if a little of it is good, more of it cannot be bad. So if healthy ego is good, then when it becomes too much, why do we say that this fellow, because he thinks too much of himself, he's an egotist? Why does it become bad then? So many contradictions are there. But here we find there is no contradiction at all. Ego is a mistake. That's all, period. There is no good ego or bad ego. Ego is a mistake, and all mistakes have to be corrected. It has to be wiped out. Vedanta? No, mature, and we will come to that. That is, this does not mean that Sri Ramakrishna said ripe ego and unripe ego. Yeah, but he never says hold on to the ripe ego. Ripe ego is when you cannot get rid of it immediately. We will come to that. I will discuss what you are telling. So here there is no confusion at all. Ego is a mistake, it is a klesha, it is the cause of suffering, and it has to go. That's all. So Sri Ramakrishna says, but such knowledge is impossible without the renunciation of ego. Renunciation means here ripe and unripe, both have to be renounced. So he says again, the ego is like a stick that seems to divide the water in two. It makes you feel that you are one and I am another. When the ego disappears in Samadhi, then one knows Brahman to be one's own inner consciousness. Without the disappearance of ego, one cannot do that. Now we come to what Dr. Bhatt was telling. A ripe ego and unripe ego. So Sri Ramakrishna about this, he says, again I quote from the Gospel, that yes, we understand intellectually, ego is bad, it has to be given up, I am not the doer, I am not the experiencer, everything. But just one day if we go without food, we will realize how much we are the soul and how much we are the body. Or if someone comes and tells us a harsh word, immediately our knowledge of the Atman will disappear. Why? Because although we may reason on an intellectual level 1,000 times, only by that we cannot get rid of the ego. Just by thinking or by reading some books or hearing some lectures, if we think that we have attained something great, we have become saints, it is not so easy. It cannot be done. That is why Sri Ramakrishna says, you may reason 1,000 times, I quote from the Gospel, but you cannot get rid of the ego. Just by reasoning, you cannot get rid of that. The ego is like a pitcher and Brahman like the ocean. In the ocean, you have kept a pitcher, an infinite expanse of water on all sides. The pitcher is set in this ocean. So inside, outside, there is water. Inside us, outside us, there is only one reality. Water is everywhere, but the pitcher is also there. The pitcher remains, Sri Ramakrishna says. Okay. So this pitcher is the ego. As long as the ego remains, Sri Ramakrishna says, you and I remain. Now he gives the solution. What to do then? In our condition, Sri Ramakrishna says that ego disappears only in Samadhi, only in the highest superconscious experience. And people like us, only God knows when we will get Samadhi. So what to do now? Here your answer comes. So Sri Ramakrishna says, if you cannot get rid of the ego immediately, then what will you do? He says, let the rascal remain as the devotee ego, the devotee I. I cannot get, I, in quotation marks, cannot be got rid of till we are in the normal state. So what to do now? What to do about this nuisance? It is a nuisance. So Sri Ramakrishna says it is a rascal. The ego is a rascal. So what to do? Let the rascal remain as a devotee I. I will be there. Now this I can be, I am the ruler of the world. I am such and such, I am a big learned person, I am so rich. In the Gita it is mentioned that when a person thinks like this, Ko anyosti sadrisho maya, who is there like me? This is also I, but this I comes under demonical qualities in Gita. He says that these are the characteristic of demons. We are seeing here what this war is happening. Why? Because of these characteristics. I will destroy this, I will destroy that country, I will destroy that person. Don't you know who I am? This is the cause of all the problem in the world. So on one side there is this I. This is the bad I, cause of all the misery in the world. And the other side is the I of the devotee, which says, I am not the doer. God, you are the doer. I am nothing. If I do anything good, if I do anything good, it is your power which is working through me. So if the I cannot go in the natural state, then let this I remain. Because this I will not cause harm to you or to anybody. This is called the ripe I. So what Sri Ramakrishna says, Kacha Ami, that is Kacha Ami, and Paka Ami, that is Paka Hua Ami. So unripe means that which is bad. And ripe means that although that ego is still there, but it will not cause harm to you or anybody else. Because even if you want to remove it, you cannot. It can only go in Samadhi. And when those people even those who have attained Samadhi, when they come down, again that egoism comes up. They say, I will do this, I will do that, I will eat. They feel that. It is not that even in the when they interact with others, they are completely rid of body consciousness. That cannot be. If I am acting, if I am breathing, if I am talking, I have to be identified with the body to some extent. And when this identification is there, ego has to be there. So even when saints come down to the ordinary level, they have the ego. But that is what Sri Ramakrishna calls the ripe ego. That is the devotee ego. It cannot do you harm. It cannot do harm to others. But ultimately, our aim is to get rid of the ego altogether for all time to come. Then only we can be permanently one with God. And that happens only in Samadhi. So when one becomes a Videha Mukta, gets rid of the body for all time to come, then the ego disappears completely, and that is the aim. But till then, what to do? Till then, this rascal ego should be disciplined. That unripe ego should be made ripe. But there is no confusion on this point that ultimately the ego has to go. It just is a ripe ego, it does not mean that keep it eternally. No. On this point, there is no confusion. A mistake has to be corrected. That's all. So on 2 points, the whole basis of what we have discussed can be summed up in these 3 points. First of all, ego is wrong cognition, wrong identification. That is the cause of the ego. Between what? Between the self and the non-self. Second point is that This identification is a delusion. It cannot be real. Because we cannot say, if we try to pinpoint from where this feeling arises, we cannot do so. We are at a loss. It can never spring from that which is jada, which is unconscious, because unconscious cannot have any feeling of its own. And the Atman is immutable, unchangeable, pure consciousness. It can never feel that I am doing this, I am doing that. So it is a delusion. And third thing, what we have seen, that because it is a misconception, it is a delusion, it is a source of pain, what is called klesha, and it has to be got rid of. They are as simple as that. There is no healthy ego, unhealthy ego, no. It has to be got rid of. But till it is there, let it be a healthy ego. What in Western parlance we call healthy ego. What Sri Ramakrishna calls it, the ego of the devotee. Devotee is humble, kind, generous, charitable, devotee, lover of God. So those things, till we are in the embodied state, those things, if they are part of that ego, it does not matter so much, because it will not hinder our spiritual progress. But ultimately, it has to go. And in the highest Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna says, it does go. That is called the non-dual experience. The non-dual, when we use the term, that means this. The term Advaita, as we have seen that in Sanskrit, when you add a to many words, the meaning becomes opposite. So Dvaita means two, there are two. And you say Advaita, that means there are not two. Now, it is so subtle, this term, it actually, to translate, sometimes we see that Advaita is translated as monism. Monism is not a actually correct translation, because mono means one. There cannot be any conception of one till there is two. If you say one in relation to what? So Advaita is beyond one and two. That is why Advaita, actually the translation is non-dualism. It is not two. But we cannot say it is one, because one implies two. So this is the interesting point. So when there is no scope for any two, and when there is no scope for any two, how can there be any ego in that? So only in that highest state, the ego disappears. Before that, we have to discipline it, make it, let it remain as a devotee of God by but it cannot, that also is very difficult. It cannot be done in a day, because it is just, actually it is the result of purification of our mind. The unripe ego will not become ripe just by saying so, or by reading books. No, a lot of effort has to be put to that. So till we are in this state, the ego has to be there, but it should be of such a form that it does not harm us or anybody else. But on the ultimate conclusion, absolutely is unanimous. Ultimately, it has to go. There is no doubt about that. Any wrong cognition must be removed. It must be corrected. That is the thing. So, of course, many more things are there about that. We can, Chitjad Granthi is a very interesting topic. Maybe we can discuss it later when we discuss Vedanta. So today, I think it is enough for the discussion of Asmita. Asmita as defined in yoga philosophy. Shankaracharya, when he starts his commentary on Brahma Sutra, he starts with this concept of adhyasa. And he says the same thing in different words. that because of without this mix-up, without this wrong identification, there can be no interaction with the world at all. So, just for our knowledge, so when we come to that, we will also discuss it. So, let us stop here, and then next time we will discuss the other three which remain. So, you have seen that it is avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Avidya is the cause of what? Asmita, egoism. Raga, attachment. Dvesha, aversion. And abhinivesha, that is clinging to life. So today we have discussed Asmita. Since it was a very important concept, we have discussed it in detail. Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha, relatively simple. Abhinivesha, of course, you go into detail, then that will also be a long discussion. But if we discuss it in short, all the three can be discussed in one discussion next time. So we will take it up next time, God willing. So let us stop here today. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna